Hello, this is the RPG Crawler, and welcome once again to Indie Game Friday, where each week I take a look at a different independent computer role-playing game. This week I'm taking a look at one of a series of RPG Maker games, largely because I haven't covered one in a while. Developed and published by Chronicles Games, the Chronicles of Quiver Dick was released on Steam back in July of 2018. The Chronicles of Quiver Dick is one of several brief, humorous RPG Maker games from Chronicles Games, each of which has a focus on a more of a satirical story and writing style rather than the gameplay mechanics. As such, this is going to be rather brief. In terms of plot, the Chronicles of Quiver Dick starts with Old Man Quiver telling a story to his purported grandchildren about how he and his wife met, after which you play as a younger version of the main character setting off for civilization after his horse is vaporized by a lightning strike. Immediately from the exchange, the nature of the humor involved should be quite clear, as the writing revolves around profanity, adult innuendo, pop references, references to various bands and musicians, songs, and so forth. In terms of gameplay, you have a basic exploration segment, interspersed with combat segments. There are no random encounters. The entire series of combats, the handful that there are all storyline-based and triggered when you address certain NPCs during the exploration phase. The exploration segment of the game is pretty standard for RPG Maker games. You wander around a series of tile-based maps in the four cardinal directions, speaking with NPCs and interacting with items. There is no overworld map in this game. The world is instead just a series of connected, discrete maps, going from one screen to the next. NPCs with new text are clearly designated with a question mark, keeping you from having to guess whether an NPC has anything new to say. Likewise, treasure chests and other objects that you can interact with to advance the storyline are clearly labeled, meaning that there's not much in the way of running around trying to interact with every barrel and box you see. Notably, with the small amount of combat in the game, you actually get story XP for speaking with every NPC and opening most chests or otherwise advancing the story by interacting with objects. Arguably, most of your experience comes from the exploration phase, so, there is that. Your main character has stats pretty standard for RPG Maker games. There's the level, which advances with experience. Advancing in level automatically improves your hit points and mana points, as well as other stats, and grants you access to more abilities to use in combat. Aside from hit points and magic points, the latter of which is used for spells, there's also energy points that are used for special abilities. In contrast with the other two, energy points start at 0 and improve as you do damage with basic attacks, using various spells or receive damage from enemies. Interestingly enough, after each combat, everything resets. Your hit points, your magic points start at max, while your energy points start at 0, so you don't have to worry about going all out for any particular encounter. There are 6 basic stats in general besides those: the attack, defense, magic defense, agility, and luck, which improve with level and with the couple of equipable items that you can collect. You can also get various magic and special attacks you can use as you level up. When the story calls for it, you enter into turn-based combat. Again, this is pretty standard for RPG Maker games, although it does use a number of plugins to make it more graphically interesting. The combat is turn-based, and during your turn, you can use a basic attack against one target, cast a spell, use a special ability, use an item, or defend. Using an item can help you regain magic, energy, and hit points, and using a special ability takes energy points. Using a spell takes magic points. Interestingly, there's a fair bit of banter back and forth in the combat of the game, and which does differentiate it from other RPG Maker games somewhat. Your character will comment when they are critically hit or below certain hit point thresholds, as will your enemies. In addition, the various combat maneuvers that enemies use can be quite interesting and amusing to look at from time to time as well. When you defeat an enemy, you may get a variety of rewards, including gold and consumable items, as well as experience towards your level. And that's pretty much it in terms of gameplay. It's very straightforward, simplistic really, and the combat's main challenge is just managing hit points and energy points over the course of the combat. With the limited number of fights, there's no reason not to make heavy use of the various consumables you're given during the game, although many fights won't require any. The usual length of the fights is actually pretty long, which I usually would count as a negative, but since there's just so few of them, it doesn't really factor in this particular game. Graphically, there's nothing super special about Chronicles either. It does use pretty standard-looking RPG Maker-style graphics and portraits, although I will say that the maps, basic as they are pleasantly put together, and the experience as a whole seems well polished. The music uses a metal style in many parts of it, and is actually pretty decent if you're into the genre. A bit unexpected for an RPG Maker game, but a nice enough surprise, and actually looking back at the other titles from this company, yeah, it's pretty much expected if you've played their other stuff. The main selling point of the game is the writing. It is comedy/satire, and as such the humor can be hit or miss. As so many games that put out with comedy as the main interest, you're really dependent on whether you like the style used. If you don't, then it won't do much for you. As I stated before, the humor relies on a mix of profanity, adult humor in the most immature way possible, and various callbacks to metal and punk bands as well as movies, among other things. There is a constant back and forth between the younger and older versions of the main character who can apparently hear the older version kind of tell the story, with the older version constantly getting the younger one into trouble, since apparently characters from his past can occasionally hear him as well. And I found that to be more hit than miss, as usual, and so it actually worked for me. The entire game can be completed in just a few hours, which is about on par with the price expected. As I stated before, it's one of a series. Crankage Games has 5 such comedy/RPG Maker games out, 3 of which are similar to this one, being satires of fantasy RPGs, while the other 2 are kind of a mix of political humor, which may put a few people off. I will say that I've found all of the fantasy-based ones rather amusing. There's Chronicles of Quiver Dick, of course. Quiver Dick's terrible tales for terrible parents to read to their equally terrible children. And then there's Metal as Fuck. Although, again, your mileage may vary. If you can find them on a bundle on sale, then it may be worth a few bucks for an afternoon or 2 of entertainment. If you do get them, though, you're probably going to be getting them for the story and the jokes rather than any stellar gameplay. And on that note, I'll wrap it up here. As always, I'll put a link to where you can pick it up below. This has been the RPG Crawler with Indie Game Friday, Chronicles of Quiver Dick, and I could have sworn I covered this one before, but apparently not. Anyway, if you like what you've seen, remember to leave a like, comment if you got any feedback, and subscribe for more RPG content, both tabletop and computer. Until next time, take care, and goodbye. And I really need to do a more proper crunchy RPG next week.